We're ready to get started this morning. If someone could ask the folks out in the hall if they could step in, we'd appreciate it so we can get started.
I know that's right. We all need one.
That's right. That's right. What we said is, Lorena says you have to be the meanie. You're the one who has to make everybody come inside, see? So I'm the one who gets to be mean. She gets to be sweet and I get to be mean. Not mean, I just want everybody to hear all this morning. Bill. In the hall? Are they coming from the hall? In the hall? Are they coming from the hall? She's gonna go get it.
Seem to be. He's not. We've got some ideas for next year. Let's talk about it. Carry this over to Sunday morning like we did that other time. Carry it over to Sunday morning. And I think we need to do it. Just like I said, I asked him, I said, these things you've been to, I said, starting with these, so many people getting involved. And there's no time for doing this. Times, maybe we could just carry one thing and move to the next story. I think it's time for that, so I think we need to consider that our planning for next year. Such an optimist.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Lorena's already talking about next year and what we can do. I'm overwhelmed. Welcome. My name is Mary Lee Orr. I'm Director of Louisiana Environmental Action Network, and I'm very proud to be here this morning with you, and we're going to have a great morning. Yay! Good morning, everybody. Can you say good morning? Hey! We have so much to share with you, and we hope that you have a lot to share with us. We're going to learn and celebrate and motivate and hopefully at the end of the day feel like we're renewed and refreshed to go on for another year on a very important issue. But I'm going to let our chairperson take over, Lorena Pospisil. She's our chairwoman from Labousse, Louisiana, and I don't know what we would do without her leadership, her commitment, and keeping everybody toeing the line near Alexandria, in case you don't know where Labousse is, and every place else in the state. And I'm going to be the timer, and if you're welcome, please, Lorena Pospisil.
Yay!
Thank you, and welcome to the 7th conference of Louisiana Environmental Action Network. Like she said, we were already talking about number 8, so put it on your calendar for next year. I would like for you to meet our board members, first of all, and I hope they have all gotten in here. Our vice president is Willie Fontenot. Does anybody here know Willie Fontenot? No. Willie?
Willie. He's lost here.
Oh, we lost Willie. Okay, we'll get him back. Since none of you know him, we'll introduce him later. Florence Robinson is our secretary. Florence. Our treasurer, Claire Baudouin. And then this is our first year under our new Constitution and bylaws, and so we have regional people. This is, we did this on purpose so that we can start bringing in people from other areas besides Baton Rouge and New Orleans and Lafayette, and let the people up north know that we are interested in what is happening to them and bring them into the fold. So I will introduce those. Jeanette Tate from Shreveport. Region 1, Jeanette.
Jeanette, stand up. Stand up, Jeanette.
Eddie Haymakers from Ruston. Is Eddie? I don't see him. Jessie Price is from the central area. She was unable to come due to illness. Mary Tutwiler from New Iberia. Mary in the back there. Daryl Stevens from Prairieville. Daryl. And Rose Jackson from Belle Chase. Rose, there she is. And other members on the board are Flo Gosson, Eloise Wall, Gerald Tillman, and Shirley Goldsmith. If any of you are here, if you will stand up now. There's Flo, okay? These people have been fantastic this past year. We've had more meetings than we've ever had before, and they've showed up for meetings and given a lot of input. It's really been great working with them. I also would like at this time, you've already met her, but to recognize Mary Lee, our executive director, who keeps things going while the rest of us are telling her what we want her to do.
You got that!
And I'd like for her to introduce the staff.
Okay.
None of us can do anything alone, and that's why I think Lean is so effective. You do such a wonderful job, but the people who help me keep going is the wonderful and committed staff, because they sure don't do it for the high salaries that they get. Their commitment and motivation is something that keeps me going, and they help me get to meetings relatively on time and keep our lives at Lean in order. So I'd like to introduce first, are Juan and Ramona in this room? If not, I'd like them to step in. Somebody could ask them. Okay, ask them to come in, but Patrick Mahan, our project coordinator, which I couldn't do without my right-hand arm there that helps with everything, wears many, many hats like all of us, and I think Ramona and Juan are on their way in. But I hope you met him at the table. Ramona Stevens is our field liaison. She's out there trying to help folks with their permits and to get public hearings and basically to get our voices heard a little bit better. Her commitment is astounding, and she works in an incredible amount of hours, and I can't thank her enough. And Juan Hines is now full-time in the office. He's from El Salvador. He's a graduate student at LSU. He can speak Spanish and tell great jokes. So he keeps us going. And there they are, I think, Juan and Ramona. Give them a hand, please. I couldn't do it without them. Thank you.
I noticed that stranger walked in that none of you knew, so we'll have him stand, our Vice President, Willie Fontenot. Nobody knows you, Willie. Would you stand? I asked how many knew you, and nobody knew you, so I thought you should stand. Okay, now we'd like to have each one of you just tell strictly your name, because we don't have much time. Just give us your name and where you're from. And we'll start with you. You.
Robert Bosbridge from Caboose, Louisiana. Gary Koji from Vienna, Virginia.
Okay.
Bill Redding from Madison, Wisconsin.
Ellen Winchell from Mandeville, Louisiana. Rose Jackson from Belle Chase, Louisiana.
Jan Williams from Buras, Louisiana.
Dave Show from Lafayette, Louisiana.
Bunny Snow, Lafayette, Louisiana.
Jeanette Cake from Shreveport, Louisiana.
Chris Kodak from St. Gabriel, Louisiana.
Kay Goday, St. Gabriel.
Bart Loomis, Covington, Louisiana.
Barbara Dodge with the League of Women Voters of Louisiana, and I live in Covington.
Mildred Fauché from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Pam Neville, St. Bernard.
Michael A. Dude, New Orleans.
Marty Rowland, New Orleans.
Marietta Her, New Orleans.
Ken Rickard, Baton Rouge.
Laura Wood, Baton Rouge. Beverly Bauer, Baton Rouge.
Greg Alexander, St. Francisville. Zach Smith, St. Francisville. Charles Flanagan, Baton Rouge.
Mike Heyman, New Orleans. Matt Brenner from New Orleans.
Brian Trotter, Baton Rouge. Stephen Robinson, Baton Rouge.
Carol Blanchard, Baton Rouge.
Frank Bonifay, Dutchtown.
Linda King, Virginia.
Pat Botnick from Wisconsin.
Wendy Calvert, New Orleans. Laura Fidel, New Orleans.
Paul Ringo from Lake Charles. Andre Landash from Baton Rouge. Michael Whitfield, Lake Charles.
Ernie Bologna, Lake Charles.
Allison Foster, Woodfield, Mississippi. Ashley Spradlock, St. Francisville.
Jason Lee, St. Francisville.
Charlotte Snyder, St. Francisville.
Robert Sessions, St. Francis.
Mary Brassel, Crowley.
Bobby Webb, Whipple, Mississippi.
Ms. Ventures, Whipple, Mississippi.
Steve Donovan, Baton Rouge.
Sam Viney, Baton Rouge.
Ted Barron, Baton Rouge.
Charlie Ellis, St. Gabriel.
Marcy Edna Cooper from Lansing, but I represent the Episcopal Church in Diocese of Western Louisiana.
Dr. Don Colby from Iberia.
Ronnie Chief from New Orleans.
Flo Johnson, Lafayette.
Lois Super, New Iberia.
Will Collette, Kinston, Maryland. Harold Speaker, Galvin. Mike Webb, Baton Rouge. John Glenn, Baton Rouge. Bill Nevitt, Raleigh.
Lee Abbott, Crowley.
Gary Gresh, New Orleans.
Jeremy Levin, Michael Colby from Walden, Vermont. John Barnes, Lafayette.
Daryl Malik Wiley from New Orleans.
Ike McIntosh, Columbia, Mississippi.
Tyler Crowe from
Joseph Beal, St. Rose, Louisiana.
Sandy Gilboy, Luling. Gail Stamp, Luling.
Mark Davis, New Orleans.
Lawrence Robinson, Alson.
Alice Cage, Elson. Patty Williams, Al.
Juanita Stewart, Allison.
Colin Busby, Harahan.
Mickey Perkins, Jefferson.
Ron Marquette, Covington.
Paula Henderson, Baton Rouge.
Andrew Lemon, Luling.
Kathy Stevens, Tioga. Nora Hurst, Pineville, Louisiana. Susan Morgan, Baton Rouge.
Gail Roberts, Point Capee, St. Francisville, pick up this on the bridge at the table.
Steve Pompier from Big Springs. Willie Fontenot, Baton Rouge.
Thank you. You know, we're all promised 15 minutes of fame. You just had about 2 seconds each. So you've got all the rest to go yet. And I've got a feeling that every one of you have become famous or infamous, depending on people's opinion, in your own areas. I'd like to know if there are any students here. If there are, we
Stand, please. Oh, fantastic. Great. That's terrific. We're all learning in this process, I know. So in a way, we're all with you as being students, because this is a constant learning process. At least it has been for me, and I assume it is for everyone. And fortunately, it seems like every place we go, we find somebody that gives us some more information that helps us to be more effective. And I hope that this conference will be one of those events that will help you in what you are doing. And we have such fantastic speakers this time that there really isn't too much time just for visiting. But we hope that you will, kind of snatch a few minutes here and there to meet with the people that you learn has similar problems to you or are in similar situations that can be helpful to you. There will be, just times when you can do that in just small segments, but please take time to do that. Maybe you can sit with them during a meal or during one of the study sessions and so forth. You can meet with them, sit next to them, and get a few words in. We have a few little things that we need to tell you is that there is coffee and juice and such here for you if you'd like some. Restrooms are down the hall. There's, I think, 2 sets on each side. If you get lost any place or need any kind of help, look for anyone that has one of these ribbon badges on, and we'll try to help you. Sometimes we get lost too, but we'll try to help. Now, if they're a speaker, if it says speaker, don't bother them, because they've got plenty to do already, but those rest of us will be glad to help you in any way we can. I would like to introduce the speakers that we have. I will just mention them and recognize them because they will be introduced properly prior to the time that they will be speaking. So I would like to have them just stand if they would. Steve Cochran.
We won't be here till noon.
Oh, okay. Michael Colby. Oh, there you are, okay. Dr. Paul Connett, I don't believe he's in yet, is he?
He's on his way.
He'll be coming in later. Dr. Jerry Poche. Poche.
I use poche when I'm down in Louisiana.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Maybe he becomes Cajun when he comes down here.
Okay, Will Collette. Back there. Linda King. And Bill Redding. Let's give them a hand because they're going to be doing a fantastic job. In fact, this whole conference is around them, and we know that they are people that can give you a lot of information and give you a lot of guidance and will help you with your work locally. Since we did start a little late, but we've gotten through the introductions early, so I would like for us to maybe go on to our rooms, and through the process maybe we can allow a little extra time at the program sessions, or maybe another 5 minutes during breaks. So we'll see how it works. I'm glad we got through this quickly because we do have little time for breaks, etc. The first two will be breaks will be track A, Michael Colby. Now that is in the Camellia Ballroom. That is right here. The other one is Will Collette's Nuts and Bolts and Organizing. Track B, you go across the lobby and down the other hallway to the other meeting rooms, and it's the last hallway on this side, the right.
That's
Yeah.
room on the right.
Huh?
That's room.
That's the room.
Hallway.
That's room.
Yeah, he said hallway.
The what?
He said hallway.
Oh, down the hallway. Yeah, it's the last room down the hallway. To your right. Okay, I have trouble with right and left, you know. That's okay. But you can be prepared and making your decision where you want to go. Let me make a suggestion. If there's more than one of you or two of you or more from a particular area, if you will split up and different ones going to different one of these sessions, then when you get home, you can bring your information together. You'll have it from all the different sources. And that way it gives you more information for your particular group or your particular area. So if you can break up like that so that you have people going to each session, that will help you in the long run. So let me suggest that. So now you're free to go to the sessions. Let's see, Michael's Safe Food and Water, Will Collette, Nuts and Bolts Organizing. Thank you.
Thank you. See you in a minute.
Get this moving fast.
Go up. Where do you want me?
Right up there.
Right to your right. I'll be your right-hand person.
That's right. Good morning again. And welcome. It's always hard to introduce these speakers because I've had the privilege of working with them, and they've become friends and allies and advocates for causes that all of us believe in. But I'm going to read a little something about Michael and share with you some of the stories of what I've been able to do with Michael.
Uh-oh.
Michael Colby is from Walden, Vermont, and he's been a consumer advocate and environmental activist for almost 10 years. He was trained by Ralph Nader's New York Public Interest Research Group, and for the past 5 years has directed food and water activist campaigns. He is also the editor of Safe Food News, Food and Water's acclaimed newsletter. It's absolutely wonderful. I hope he has some copies for you here. Michael and the work of Food and Water have been featured in the New York Times, Newsweek, the Wall Street Journal, ABC's 2020, Good Morning America, and many other media outlets. Michael and his wife own a small organic farm and live in an energy-independent solar home in the frosty northeast kingdom of Vermont, and he's offered me retreats there when I get exhausted. I met Michael and his staff when we were fighting seafood irradiation, which I hope you're aware of the threat of what they want to do to our seafood to make it last forever to go up north. It's a scary process, and he's going to share it with you. And we held a protest out in front of a hotel in New Orleans, and we let the Department of Agriculture know what the people felt about irradiated seafood. We had great papier-mâché fish, and Michael was a wonderful spokesperson. He's working on pesticides, food irradiation, and all those issues that are so important to us, the quality of our food that we feed to our family, which is, of course, life-giving to all of us. He's terrific. He's a friend. Please welcome Michael Colby.
Before I start, I didn't bring enough safe food news, so what I'm going to do is pass around a sign-up sheet. And if everyone can sign up, and you'll get one in the mail.
Wonderful. Great information.
Thank you. Yeah, you can pass a few around. Hello. Great. Well, it's wonderful to be here. It's kind of an awkward time for me to be traveling because when she said the frosty Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, it's very true. Tonight, I just talked to my wife this morning. We're expecting snow flurries this evening. And only about half of our tomatoes are red right now. So she's going, "What are you doing in Louisiana?" I should be home harvesting. Normally I don't travel this time of year, but I feel such a kinship with Mary Lee and everyone at Lean that I made an exception and I want to come here and address you today about safe food activism. I should say that while I am the director of food and water, the water on our name is misleading because we don't really work on water. So if you're expecting to hear about water, I'm sorry. But you will hear about activism that can pertain to water. Food and Water is a national environmental group that's been around for about 8 years. Right now, as Mary Lee said, we're located in Vermont. Half of our staff are involved in farming. I have a small organic farm that we sell at the farmers market twice a week. 2 other staff people as well run community-supported gardens and community-supported farms. And we think that's very important because when we get out and talk about safe food and try to stop some of these technologies, pesticides, or radiation, it's important for us to look the industry in the eye and say, they can't say that it's not possible because we're doing it. The importance of food safety activism. We work on food safety issues for a number of reasons. We think that it encompasses a whole host of problems that we are facing in the society. First and foremost, food issues obviously are a direct link with nature, with the environment, with our cultural way of life here in the United States. And also food issues are very important in terms of economics and reconnecting with rural communities all across this country. We were founded by a family physician, Dr. Wally Bernstein, who for 30 years was a doctor focusing on preventive medicine. About 10 years ago, 8 to be precise, he started finding out about the issue of irradiated food. And he got frustrated in his practice because he kept seeing the same people over and over again, and new people with these new diseases, cancers, Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue, lupus, you name the disease, they're all in the increase. And he started thinking to himself, if I'm really going to focus on preventive medicine, we've got to heal the earth. We've got to heal the food supply. So he founded Food and Water with that in mind, which he believes and we believe is the ultimate preventive medicine, which of course is to heal the food supply. What Food and Water tries to do is educate people on health-based activism, connecting the dots between the toxic technologies that we all know so much about and the health crisis that we're facing here in this country. The National Cancer Society just came out with their, American Cancer Society just came out with their new figures on how many of us in the United States will get cancer. It's now 1 in 3. 1 in 3. And it's funny, this morning's paper, whenever I travel, I always find something great in the local papers. And I saw, what was wonderful about this is that I thought just the representatives in the Northeast were rather blank between the ears. But now I see that's happening down here too. Your Senator Johnston, he's going to do something on this Cancer Alley study, if you saw that, which is wonderful. He's going to study this. But he's calling for, they were all moved by this 10-year-old kid. You got to read this story. He was in the Metro section of the Times-Picayune this morning. He was moved by this story of this 10-year-old kid who talked about his 6-year-old brother who died of a rare brain cancer. He was moved so much by it that he's calling for Congress to do a 7 to 10 year study on the effects of the industrial pollutions in what's called the Cancer Alley, which you all know so much about. But what was also funny in here, if I can find it here. Anyway, they talk about that the environmental hypothesis that was being proposed that could be causing these cancers, they found that to be interesting, and they're looking forward to looking into it. Where have they been? This environmental hypothesis looks interesting? I say it's time to wake up. And I say that there is a way to wake them up and wake up this society, and it's through grassroots activism. And that's really what I'm going to talk about. First, I'm going to talk about what's wrong. That's kind of the doom and gloom section of this talk. Then we're going to talk about, I would like to propose a few reasons why I think we got there, and then conclude with what we can do, how we approach these issues in terms of an activist standpoint. But first, a story. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Wes Jackson. He's a wonderful farmer, poet, writer. He runs the Land Institute in Kansas. And I saw him talk a few years ago, and he told a very, very interesting story, which for me outlines what's going on in this country. It was a story about giving students all around the world, kids, grade school kids, a math test, a two-part math test. First part was just proficiency, add, addition, subtraction, multiplication. What happened there was the children from Southeast Asia did the best, which was not surprising. The American students did the worst, which again is not really all that surprising. The second part of the test was a simple yes or no question. Are you good at math? The American students thought they were the best at math, and the Southeast Asia students thought they were the worst. Doing bad and feeling good about it. That's what's happening in this country. We're burning waste. We're irradiating food. We're putting toxins in the form of pesticides and chemicals on the food supply, and we're feeling good about it. It's not right, and something's got to be done, and something is about to get done. How do we get in that situation where we're doing bad and feeling good about it? I propose a few answers, or a few hypotheses. One is that I feel like this country is fixated on consumption. Too often you hear about consumer rights or a consumer rights organization. I think we need to start making a shift and work more toward producer responsibilities. We have to take into account what foods we're eating, where they're coming from, what kind of processes they went through. Where's our energy from? When you turn on the faucet, where's the water from? We've kind of lost connection with all those aspects of our life. And we have to start worrying about taking care of our own needs and processes. The second, which kind of fits in the cultural reasons, or my cultural hypothesis for how we got where we are, is specialization. Now we have this priesthood of experts out there that you always hear quoted in the newspapers. A nuclear accident, well, the experts said they didn't think there would be any problem to human health. The experts are telling us irradiated food is necessary. The experts are telling us we have to keep putting pesticides on the food. Who are these experts? Who are these people? Are there any experts in this room that say that? I don't seem to run into them anywhere, but they seem to be all over the newspapers assuring us that everything is fine. And I think we have to pull the mask off those people and see that they are in the back pockets of industry and in the back pockets of the government bureaucracies of this country, and start turning our back on these experts. Start looking in to, we don't need experts to know we got a health problem, a health crisis in this country. 1 in 3 getting cancer is a crisis, is an epidemic. Yet we have the experts telling us it's not. It's no problem. If you say it is, you're getting hysterical. You're using emotions, Mr. Colby. Well, cancer is an emotional thing. And I'll talk a little bit more about using emotions in activism toward the end of the talk. The other thing in this priesthood of experts is, we live in a democracy. And in the last 20 years or 30 years or so, particularly in the agricultural revolution with pesticides, new technologies and processes have been allowed to circumvent the entire democratic process. Now, I'm only 29 years old, but I don't remember my parents or my grandparents telling me about when they got to vote on whether or not they were going to put these toxins in their food back in the 40s and 50s. I don't remember getting to vote on whether or not we need to build hundreds of nuclear facilities around this country to expose our food to radiation. Did I miss that? Did you guys get to vote on that? Okay, just making sure I wasn't asleep for that major referendum. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed as well. New technologies have to go through the democratic process. We, the people, have to make these decisions on these new technologies, not just the corporations, not just the government bureaucracies. Secondly, the next little digression here is, which also fits in my cultural hypothesis of what's wrong in this country, is a little essay. I'm going to read from a little essay from a book called The Unsettling of America, Culture and Agriculture. It was written by Wendell Berry. If anyone's familiar with Wendell Berry's work, he's also a farmer, poet, writer, philosopher. He's really shaped the philosophy of food and water in an amazing way. And for a little plug, our next newsletter, I did an interview with him, and that'll be coming out in the winter issue of Safe Food News. But he talks about specialization in the United States, and he talks about the effects of specialization on our culture and on us as individuals. And in this short passage, it's only 3 or 4 paragraphs, Mr. Berry is talking about a particular individual. He's making this individual up, but it's someone who is unsatisfied with the way their lives are going, and he's drawing the line to the specialization in terms of what's causing it. So let me read this to you without messing it up anymore. The fact is, however, that this is probably the most unhappy average citizen in the history of the world. He has not the power to provide himself with anything but money, and his money is inflating like a balloon and drifting away, subject to historical circumstances and the power of other people. From morning to night, he does not touch anything that he has produced himself, in which he can take pride. For all his leisure and recreation, he feels bad, he looks bad, he is overweight, his health is poor. His air, water, and food are all known to contain poisons. There is a fair chance that he will die of suffocation. He suspects that his love life is not as fulfilling as other people's. He wishes that he had been born sooner or later. He does not know why his children are the way they are. He does not understand what they say. He does not care much and does not know why he does not care. He does not know what his wife wants or what he wants. Certain advertisements and pictures in magazines make him suspect that he is basically unattractive. He feels that all his possessions are under threat of pillage. He does not know what he would do if he lost his job, if the economy failed, if the utility companies failed, if the police went on strike, if the truckers went on strike, if his wife left him, if his children ran away, if he should be found to be incurably ill. And for these anxieties, of course, he consults certified experts, who in turn consult certified experts about their anxieties. It is rarely considered that this average citizen is anxious because he ought to be, because he still has some gumption that he has not yet given up in defense of the experts. He ought to be anxious because he is helpless. That he is dependent upon so many specialists, the beneficiary of so much expert help, can only mean that he is a captive, a potential victim. If he lives by the competence of so many other people, then he lives also by their indulgence. His own will and his own reasons to live are made subordinate to the mere tolerance of everybody else. He has one chance to live what he conceives to be his life, his own small specialty within a delicate, tense, everywhere strained system of specialties. From a public point of view, the specialist system is a failure because, though everything is done by an expert, very little is done well. It's a very powerful book, very powerful essay. It's from The Unsettling of America. That's what we're talking about. That's that frustration we're all feeling about when you read in the paper. Again, it's in today's paper about Cancer Alley. When you hear that the politicians think it's an interesting concept, this environmental hypothesis. Isn't that an interesting we should study that till the year 2005 and see what happens. We seize the power. We are the experts. We eat, we breathe, we drink. We should be able to tell what comes in and out of our bodies and what comes in and out of our communities in terms of food and industrial policy. The other little story, back when I had enough power to run a television, there's not a lot of sunlight in Vermont to go solar, so I had to sacrifice that. But on Sunday mornings, I used to love to watch those news shows, whatever they were, David Brinkley, when they get all the talking head politicians coming together. Did you ever notice the commercials that were run during those television shows? There was one that struck me very hard. It was from Archer Daniels Midland. Supermarket to the world was the name. Yeah, that's the company, that's their slogan. And in this commercial, they start out, they're talking about back in the old times, back in the 50s, one farmer fed 20 people. That this was bad. This is the message they're giving. And they show a picnic table with a farmer at the head of it and about 20 people. Then they're going back. The camera's going back, more and more people. But today, because of the supermarket to the world, one farmer is feeding over 100 people. The message here, this is good. But what are the implications of one farmer feeding 100 people? What does that do to the environment? What does that do to the farmer's health? What does that put on the food? These are some of the assumptions that we have to start questioning. Second hypothesis, now that we're over with the cultural thing, is our role in nature. It seems as though we're kind of stuck. There's two fronts here. We're either attempting to conquer nature, which is what I used to think, but lately I've started thinking that we're scared. We're scared to death of nature. We're creating as many boundaries as possible from getting our hands in the soil, from knowing where our water comes from, to knowing where our electricity comes from as possible. So I'm still kind of struggling with that one, trying to figure out which one it is. It could most likely it's a combination of both, but particularly in agriculture and people's relationship to their food, we are completely disconnected from nature. Which reminds me of another little story. Did you see the Soviet Union wanted to put those huge reflectors in space? So it would be the equivalent of, at night, it would be equivalent of 5 moonlights, full moons, so they could light up the night sky. Anyway, that's just another little story, and another attempt to show how disconnected we are from nature. And then I guess they're also, here in the United States, of course, our version of it is we're going to put up advertisements in space. Huge illuminated advertisements, M&Ms, Pepsi, all night long. Of course, we'll never think, what does that do to the animals out there? What does that do to nature? What does that do to our cycles that we have to rely on in terms of day, night, awake, sleep, all of that? We won't think about that because, by God, we have to sell more M&Ms. Third hypothesis, moving away from our role in nature, is economic. Again, back when I watched television, Dan Rather used to always come on. I guess now it's Dan Rather and Connie Chung, I read. They come on and they talk about the gross national product, our economy. Going up, good, as George Bush would say. Up, good. More goods. Barbara, ready to die. No. Dana Carvey impersonations. What does that really mean, though? What does that mean when our gross national product is going up? Is this necessarily good? What is the gross national product? As Paul Conard will tell you later today, when you burn more garbage, your gross national product goes up. That's what they're cheering about. When you create more goods, when you get more raw materials out of the earth, make them into products, throw them away, burn them, landfill them, the gross national product went up. That's what we're cheering about, folks. Is that good? I'll leave that up to you to decide. But I think we need to start thinking in alternatives in terms of our economic structure, obviously. And what we're proposing is something like the gross earth deficit. What does it mean when you buy packaged goods? What does it mean when you go to your supermarket and buy food from South America? What does it mean when you buy irradiated food? What are the implications to the environment and to the economy? And the fourth one, before I get to the major part of the talk, which is food safety activism, is the spiritual connection. You know, the earth is made up of 70% salt water, and so are we. And that's not an accident. We are an extension of the earth, and we have to start understanding that there is no throwing away, there is no putting away. We are in a closed system. We have to come to grips with that, and also we are one basic evolving gene pool. And when we do damage to our gene pool, it may not show up to our children or our grandchildren, but that damage, that insult has been done, and over the course of generations, over a long time span, which we have increasingly problems thinking of in our culture today, a cancer, a birth defect, a degenerative disease could actualize itself, and we have to start thinking in a longer time span. The last one is the regulatory mindset of this country today. Particularly, I want to talk about the notion of acceptable risk. The government today, when they approve food irradiation, when they approve the toxins in the food supply, are telling us now that 1 in a million, and this is guesswork, one person dying in a million per use, per chemical, is acceptable. Now again, getting back to democracy, do you guys remember anyone asking you this, if that was okay? It's appalling. And Dr. John Goffman, a renowned nuclear scientist, talks about, says we shouldn't call it acceptable risk, we should call it premeditated random murder. That's what it is. That's what you're talking about. You got these pencil pushers, this spreadsheet mentality in the back of the room, and the government bureaucracies and the corporations figuring out, well, you know, we could put down this million pounds, we're only going to kill about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people. I guess that's okay. They package it up for the heads of the companies and the politicians to go out and sell it to us. This is outrageous, people. This is unconscionable. And I'll even go farther, this is criminal. 25 years ago, if some politicians or corporation would have come out and said 1 in a million is okay, they would have been locked up. Or they would have had a straitjacket put on them. And we need to get back to that time. We need to start looking these people in the eye and saying, no, 1 in a million is not acceptable, period. Risk-benefit. They do that whole calculation. You know, who's deciding this risk-benefit? Who's deciding the 1 in a million? Again, it's the corporations and the scientists that they are paying, and the accountants and the actuaries that they pay. And it's ridiculous. Got another little reading here, where I can find it. Getting into pesticides now. The recent ruling with Delaney, which is one of the most, well, the best food safety law on the books. It's very clear, which makes it the best just in the sense that it's a clear law written by our government. It says, real briefly, you cannot introduce a carcinogen in a processed food, period, passed in 1958. Very strong. It should be the model for all of our legislation in terms of food safety activism. It should be expanded into raw foods, as a matter of fact. Should not allow carcinogens in the food supply, processed, whole, whatever. Should be illegal. The Delaney Amendment in '58 tried to set out and do that. But during the last 20 years, the EPA and the FDA circumvented the law, broke the law, and instead they slipped toward this acceptable risk scenario. Recently, however, an environmental group, NRDC, took the EPA to court and said, look, the law is very clear, you can't introduce carcinogens, and you are. And the court, Circuit of Appeals in San Francisco, ruled in their favor. Cancer-causing pesticides banned in food. This was from last summer. Landmark ruling. And there's a quote in here from an industry person that I like to read to people because it kind of sums up the mindset that we're up against. This is from a lawyer for the Grocery Manufacturers of America. Try to follow this logic. We'll have a test at the end of this short quote. 2 sentences. You can't find any food that doesn't have natural carcinogens. Yet the ruling allows natural carcinogens at an unsafe level, but not man-added carcinogens at a safe level. Read that last sentence again. This is a lawyer. This is an educated human being. The ruling allows natural carcinogens at an unsafe level, but not man-added carcinogens at a safe level. Now, it's this whole crazy notion that if you got natural carcinogens out there, I mean, what you have here is you have a civil rights movement or a chemical rights movement for carcinogens. If they exist over there, they should exist everywhere. That's in effect what he's saying. It comes out with irradiated food. It comes up all the time. When you irradiate meats, you create benzene, which is an enormously toxic, carcinogenic chemical. Even small little amounts can cause a cancer. Yet benzene exists naturally in some foods. So we've been fighting that for 10 years. Well, you know, Mr. Colby, benzene is naturally in some egg products. Big deal. What does that matter? If it's a carcinogen and it's not there to begin with, it shouldn't be there by any other process, particularly when the process you're proposing is unnecessary and easily replaceable by more economical and safer alternatives. But we have this whole band of renegades in the food industry out crying for equal rights for carcinogens. And we have to be careful when we run into these people and make sure that they understand that we're not going to tolerate our carcinogen, period, even if it exists in nature. And what they forget, and I'm not a scientist, but I do understand that when benzene is occurring naturally in eggs, there are anti-carcinogens and other natural processes going on in these foods that offset them. They become a whole. But are you creating these natural anti-carcinogens when you artificially create benzenes and peroxides and formaldehydes in food products? I would suggest that we don't. Strongly suggest that they don't. So be careful for the carcinogen rights movement. I just named it. Anyway, those are some of the reasons, the regulatory, the economic, the cultural reasons why I believe we're in a cancer epidemic and what we're fighting, everyone here has their battle that they're fighting. If it's cancer, if it's not Cancer Alley, it's food, it's water. I mean, everyone here has a story. And we have to start looking at the bigger picture. After you look at the bigger picture and you want to take on your issue, and again, I'll use food issues because that's what I do as an example, but they're easily interchangeable. How do you act? What are your choices as activists? What can we do? First of all, what we try to train people to do is come up with a goal. What is your goal? It may sound simple, but it's more difficult than you think. Someone name a fight you're facing out there. Who's facing a problem? Crop dusters and pesticides. There's a problem. Now, what's a goal in addressing this problem? Stop them. This is easy. Stop the crop dusting, spraying of pesticides, which we're working with a community in Wisconsin, which has just been ravaged by crop dusting, particularly for potato crops, which is one of the most heavily sprayed food crops. Most of the potatoes that are so heavily sprayed are used by companies like McDonald's, Wendy's, Anheuser-Busch, which owns, I think, Frito-Lay and some other salty food, snack food companies. And they're buying out the small family farms in the Midwest and Idaho so they can have these huge, hundreds and hundreds of acres of potatoes. And I just recently got a call from a woman that we're helping organize. She runs a group called Prairie Fire in Wisconsin. And they had the local public broadcasting service out, public TV station, to film one of these aerial spraying episodes. And right after they talked to the guy that ran the plane company and the chemical company, saying, oh, it's no big deal, it's, this is nothing, just look, it's going all right in the field, no drift or anything like that. They decided to put their camera on the field as they're going to spray. And of course, there's drift going everywhere. I don't know what the percentage is that actually gets to the crop, but it's probably less than 50. After they sprayed, they kept the camera running purely by coincidence. And a fox came swaggering out. A beautiful fox, which to me, and I have plenty of foxes where I live, they're really the symbol of beauty in nature. They're very coy, they're a beautiful animal. Swaggering, collapsed, dead. Dead fox. Anyway. And the beauty is that they got it on film, and right after the chemical company says, look, there's no problem, this is 2 miles from a school, the whole works. I mean, they're trying to make another Cancer Alley there. But anyway, what is your goal when you approach these issues? Stop the spraying of pesticides. Protect the earth and its inhabitants, pure and simple. And it's very important when you enter working on an issue that you don't compromise from the beginning. No compromise. It's very, very hard to do, because the first thing you start building a movement, the first time you start going to your neighbors and talking to them and educating about the problems, you're going to start getting pressure. Maybe there's an environmental group in your area that's, likes to kind of play the political game, likes to go to luncheons with their politicians. They're going to come knocking on your door. You know, Sally, look, let's sit down. Let's phase out crop dusting. Let's just let them crop dust over there, and we'll stop it over here. That's always going to be knocking on your door. And you got to stand firm, particularly at the beginning. Because if you're going to go to the bargaining table, go with everything you want. Everything you want, because that's the only way you're going to get anything remotely acceptable. What are the methods? Once you've figured out your goal, once you've figured out you're not going to compromise from the beginning, what are the, I break it down in three. There's really three ways you can go. You can go legal, sue them, take them to court. You can lobby, legislative, or lobby the agencies, Environmental Protection Agency, etc. Or you can go direct grassroots activism. Now, every issue is unique. There isn't one right, one wrong. Usually you need a combination of these type of strategies. But I would argue that too often in the environmental movement, we're top-heavy. We're all too often too excited to have that meeting with the congressperson, too excited to be invited to go see Carol Browner, too excited to be invited to go see Mike Espy of the United States Department of Agriculture. We often tell people, do you have enough friends? Do you really need one more friend? You don't really have to go see her and be compromised at the beginning. But anyway, legal avenues. And I want some input here from people if I could. File a lawsuit, challenge the regulations in court, take the corporations to court. What are the pluses and minuses of going down the legal avenue as an activist? Throw it open. Yep.
One cost of that one legally is that you're building a record and something that you accomplish may be helped or used by another organization in the line. And it'll help them. It's a long process.
Yep.
I guess that's probably the biggest negative because you usually have to go through all the courts. But in our case, which we got a Louisiana Supreme Court ruling, it helps many agencies and many people across the state know there's not a problem.
Yep. Did everyone hear that? Creates a record. Paper trail as well. Yeah?
Permit or regulations passed or issued that may be on the recourse, and you have to keep the grassroots going with legal issues.
Yeah.
It increases insurance costs for the company polluting, killing us.
Increases insurance costs. That's good.
Sometimes it creates a false hope. You filed a suit in 1980 and it still hasn't gone to court.
He said creates a false hope. Can you hear me without this? No. No? Okay. Okay. That's a very good point.
It burns people out. People
There you go.
Energetic and dedicated
Yep.
because they have to keep quiet because of court restrictions.
It burns people out, forces people like us to be quiet. And if you can beckon back to earlier when I talked about experts, I mean, here is a system built for experts and not built for us, unless there are lawyers in the room who can understand those briefings. I certainly can't, or the rulings, or whatever. It's also very costly. Lawyers aren't cheap unless you get very lucky and get the pro bono lawyers out there that do wonderful work for free, or you connect with a group that'll fund a lawyer to help you out. But it is a very, very costly alternative. Is it necessarily in our favor, too? You have to ask. When you decide on your tactics, what's the ground rules? What kind of playing field are you going to be on in the court system? You know, you could put all your money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, basically tell your grassroots, look, we're going to have, Mr. or Mrs. Lawyer fight this. They're going to be quiet. They're going to be in the background. You can certainly update them on the proceedings if they can read them without falling asleep. And then it's in the hands of who? Who are these judges? Who appointed them? Or their background? I mean, it's really a big roll of the dice in terms of putting all your marbles in the legal challenge area, and it's something to consider. The other thing is, you're really being forced to compromise. You're accepting, by going into that avenue, you're accepting the fact that what that judge says, you can appeal and appeal and appeal, but sooner or later it's going to stop, is what you're going to have to live by. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a real for this for many years. And like I said, we've been active for 13 and a half years. But the thing about the legal issue is that, like you said, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. When we went through the legal, or through the courts, we still had a lot of grassroots activism. Our attorney didn't do all of the steps and stuff. It was just like you were probably working in all these arenas, as you said, the legal, the lobbying, and the grassroots activism also. But how can you not consider something like that, especially when you live in a state like we do in Louisiana with a governor who is really anti-environment? And sometimes, you know, you have to when you go play baseball, you got to play by the rules of baseball and use the bat and ball.
Yeah.
So it's not something real negative. As I said, our
Yeah.
particular case really is a landmark decision and helps citizens every single day. So it's a real balancing act again.
It's a big balancing act. And the thing I argue is that, too, I think we're way off. We're too skewed toward legal and too skewed toward lobbying and legislation, rather than the grassroots. But the other thing with legal is you're not really building a movement, as I already said. You're asking the experts to solve your problem, and your grassroots will probably fall asleep in the process. Let's go over legislative, both dealing with Congress, your state legislature, your city council, and your bureaucracies, pluses and minuses. What are people's experiences? Yeah, in the back.
Legislation could be just as costly as your legal side of it, although, you know, that's the route to go.
Yeah.
The most effective.
Yeah. Very expensive.
And I want to echo what Teresa said. I mean, in our state, the only way we have really gotten anything done here is through the legal process and legislative process. That's been our biggest gains environmentally in this state. One of the bigger problems is enforcement. The federal and state governments don't enforce it. We've got good regs, we just don't enforce it. And the legal avenue is the only one that has really been open to a lot of the environmental people. I think produced waters, this is probably the key thing. 19 years the government did not enforce the regulations. And they asked the Sierra Club, why do you wait so long to sue? I said, well, the federal government, couldn't enforce the laws for 19 years, so we felt we should step in.
Yeah.
And that, this area, that's been our biggest ally has been the legal process and the legislative process.
Great. Go ahead.
Well, our experience is if you have no constituency when you lobby, you're nobody. And that's why the grassroots groups are so important.
Yeah.
And also when they come together, they're much stronger than when they act individually.
Yeah. That's the argument I'm going to make. That we can talk a little bit more about the downsides of lobbying. Again, it's very similar to legal. It's the experts, it's the lobbyists you have to rely on, it's the politicians you have to rely on. When you start doing that, you better watch your back. It again can be top heavy. And what we found is the grassroots out there are getting a little tired of getting action alerts to call Congressperson X and Senator Z and constantly being told, there are very few victory follow-ups with those kind of action alerts. We got this law. We got everything we wanted. And it gets a little demoralizing. And when you go back to these people after you told them to call 10 times different congresspeople and different legislators, it gets a little tough to sustain a movement and sustain their energy. So what I argue, what Food and Water argues is, go with the grassroots. That's where our power is. Organize in the marketplace. Build up a movement. Then, when you have an unruly mob, an educated group of people, let the politicians come to you at some point. Let them start begging you. They'll see the political need for these people. They'll want to do something for them, and then you're in a position of power. You're in a position of strength. And that's really how we stopped irradiated food for the past 5 years. It's been approved by the FDA. It's been approved by the USDA. The Clinton administration loves it. They can't sell this stuff because we organized at the supermarket. And we drove them nuts. We said the federal government can do what they want, Congress can do what they want, but we are not going to let the supermarket industry, the food industry, sell these products. period. We got over 100 food industry leaders, Quaker Oats, McDonald's, Ralston Purina, A&P supermarkets, Pizza Hut, everyone signing on to statements saying they're not going to irradiate. And we've created this, we've made the government look rather silly because the food industry and consumers are organized against this. Yet the government keeps pushing it. Clinton's Mike Espy at USDA is the only person out front saying, irradiate, irradiate, irradiate. And here in Louisiana, your environmental commissioner, I forget his name, Odom. He's running around this state saying irradiate seafood, irradiate seafood. But the food industry is running from him. So we've created this funny kind of situation. And the food industry, particularly with food, I mean, there are different issues that, I mean, the food industry, it's you're blessed with some great opponents because they're easy to scare, and their profit margin is very low. So if you can organize them and let them know you're opposed to a certain technology, they're more likely to stay away from it. Sometimes you're stuck. You have to go legal. You have to go legislative earlier than you want. But you got to be careful. Particularly, I want to talk about legislative, a situation in the pesticide movement, which is in our latest newsletter. I wrote it up. A group of legislatively minded environmental groups in Washington, NCAMP, NRDC, Citizen Action, got kind of seduced by the administration, by the Carol Browners and the power forces. And they proposed to phase out carcinogenic pesticides over 10 years. This is an environmental proposition, to phase it out. Now, I first saw it and I said, well, wait a second. It's kind of like the similar situation here in Cancer Alley where the legislator sees someone die and said, let's study it for 6 years. What is a legislatively mandated phase out? I started doing some research. Environmental legislatively mandated phase outs have never worked. The Clean Air Act is a perfect example. Back in 1970, Congress promised that they're going to have the air clean by 1990. It got worse. So in 1990, what'd they do? They didn't come out and say, we failed, therefore we resign, and we're going to put people in here that will do what they say. No, they passed the Clean Air Act of 1990. 2005, we're going to get rid of those toxins, and it's going to be a charade after a charade. And for an environmental group or groups to propose such a phase-out is unconscionable, in our opinion. We know people are being hurt. We know people are dying. Let's put a stop to it tomorrow. And if we take that kind of attitude and take that kind of strong position, we can connect to people out there who have their parents having cancer, have their children wearing wigs from chemotherapy, have community members who are hurting from all these diseases. They'll respond to that. They'll feel that. They already do. And that's what we have to connect with as activists. And that's what the grassroots will connect with. Because when we put out action alerts, when Purdue said they were going to irradiate, we swamped Purdue, put out advertisements, call Purdue, he's going to irradiate. Within a week, his public relations firm called us and said, Food and Water, what do you want? Stop calling us. We are going crazy. This happened 3 years ago. We said, well, give us a statement, and we dictated it, that says Purdue will not irradiate. About an hour later over the fax, here it came. Purdue's statement on irradiation, which stood. Then we went to Tyson. Then we went to ConAgra. We went right down. Every top poultry company gave us a similar statement. Then we got to go back to our grassroots and say, look what your phone call did. Look what your letter and your activism did. And the people on Safe Food Network at Food and Water understand that feeling of victory. When they get the next one, they're ready for the next fight. They're ready for the next phone call, the next letter to write. And we resisted that urge to go through Congress. And so far, it has worked. But again, there are specific instances for every issue that you're gonna attack. What are some of the backgrounds or the troubles with organizing at the grassroots level in terms of direct activism? I think you have some in the back there. You want to bring up? Yeah.
What now?
Drawbacks of doing what I'm saying.
There's no drawbacks. I think what you're saying is absolutely right. Grassroots is where it is. I say most politically, I have it differently. I think this very group has had some wonderful political victories this past session. We work very hard.
Yeah.
Each and every one of these people are committed on their efforts to do it.
Absolutely. because there's such a grassroots in this state. That's where you're going to win. I mean, you've gone on to the second step. You've got a great grassroots, and the legislators are listening to you.
They're coming to us. They're
Perfect.
got every man. Well, what are you going to do?
Perfect.
Don't fight us. Help us.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what we've done here.
Yeah. And the country, you should know, I don't know if you're told this very often, but the country looks to lean, looks to the environmental leaders in Louisiana in terms of what you've done environmentally. I mean, believe me. I mean, the big groups out there in Washington, they're like, what's lean going to do? What's Mary Lee Orr say about this kind of tactic? So you guys are to be commended, but most people aren't at that level where they've got the grassroots built up and they got the politicians knocking on their door. So I commend you for that. But some of the tactics which you guys have been through, I'm sure, is when you start winning and you start doing the grassroots. What do they do? Which drives me crazy. They start calling you names. You guys all been called Luddites, emotionalist, radical. You're not a scientist. You guys experienced all this? Yeah, Mary Lee is nodding very.
Everything.
Isn't that frustrating? Well, the one that gets me the most is the emotionalist, which I brought up earlier. You're using emotion. Again, we're talking about 1 in 3 people getting cancer. Again, as I told you, our founder is a family physician, Dr. Wally Bernstein. He took me, when I first started, which was an amazingly eye-opening experience, he took me to a children's cancer ward. When he was started as a physician, he told me that if they had a few cases on a floor, it was odd, and local doctors would come around and look at the cases and try to study the cases of children with cancer. Now we've got entire hospitals in several regions of states dedicated to children's cancer. And let me tell you, when you see kids 11, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old with wigs, again, from chemotherapy and some of the cancer treatments, it's emotional. Living is emotional, and there's nothing wrong with being emotional when we attack these problems that we're confronted with incineration, with food irradiation. Absolutely, we have to use emotion with facts and figures to back up why we have this feeling in our hearts, in our bodies, about life, about illness. Go ahead.
Well, one of the, I think, drawbacks is, or things that they call environmentalists, they tell us that we are making people lose jobs, and particularly when you want to stop something in its tracks. And that's why phase-out is more attractive, because it gives the industry, time and the workers. And I think we've had surveys here indicating people would rather have a job and take the risk. I mean, this is what you're up against.
Yeah. Particularly here in Louisiana, the old jobs versus the environment argument, which takes time to debunk, but it's incredibly debunkable. Yes?
Well, if you did, that'll decrease the unemployment rate, won't it? Let me ask you this. You're talking about emotionalism versus fact.
No, not versus.
Not versus.
In conjunction.
In conjunction. I'm having trouble with the conjunction part. In my rural community, it's not enough to see the neighbors dropping dead on either side, and people like my father looking like a cross between Freddy Krueger and somebody from outer space with leprosy, because he's worked with the land and with the chemicals. The doctor who is the head of the Cancer Society said we need some kind of factual information before he can pass out anything at the local benefits explaining the cancer risks of our environment. Edwards has said there's no correlation, but isn't there a correlation between living in a rural community and using these pesticides? Isn't our cancer rate 5 times greater or something? And do you have anything to substantiate it?
Yeah, there are enormous numbers of studies out there, and I can help you individually if you call.
And the Cancer Association.
Cancer rate of farmers is 5-6 times what it is in the general public. I'd like to see the cancer. I haven't studied the cancer rate here in Louisiana, particularly Cancer Alley, but I know there are a number of studies out. Linda King would be a good person to connect with from the Environmental Health Network. She's absolutely.
It is proven.
I'd have to. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the region. I mean, I can't just a blanket statement, but if look at your region. connect with your health professionals. And there are groups out there that if you're not satisfied with the stats that Edwards and others are putting out, do your own health survey. And there are groups out there that are doing just that, taking it into their own hands, going door to door, asking what their health situations have been over the past 10, 15, 20 years, and putting it together. It makes for a very, very, very good graphic. When you can go to the legislature and see all the red dots, those are cancers. And see the big black smokestack? That's the incinerator or whatever, and show the clusters around, around the industrial points of pollution.
It's just from smoking though.
Yeah, it's just from smoking. Of course. Of course. People are smoking near those incinerators. Of course they are. When you can taste the air, you know something. Any other comments from the people in the grassroots here about some of the tactics I talked about and experiences you want to share? What time do we have, by the way? I don't have a watch. 10:10, okay.
Well, I would just like to emphasize to you that I think most of the people know this. It's just not Governor Edwards saying this. That is his Public Health Department report.
Yeah.
I mean, and it carries a lot of weight.
These are scientists working on this stuff.
Yeah.
And
You gotta-
we're very frustrated when you try to convince others and then they come up with an official statement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, we had the front page news saying there is no Cancer Alley. The woman that Marietta was talking about, who's the state epidemiologist, came out and said that's all faulty data. That data is now being reanalyzed at the Snow Institute in Boston. Hopefully we're going to get front pages with that, saying it was analyzed incorrectly.
Great. Great.
Deborah Lee Davis of the National Academy of Sciences just very recently came out with a paper with some information for you on the rural communities, and that's fact. Irrefutable.
Would you please give that to me?
The pesticides and breast cancer you're talking
Well,
about?
yeah, and the rural
Yeah.
communities as well.
The
But I mean,
cancer-
she's
the
accepted by the
cancer
government as
society.
well, so you have both sides.
Yeah.
And it's in
Great.
Rachel's hazardous waste,
Yeah.
this last couple of issues.
Let me get it from you later.
Yeah, here's the study. Right? The study draws link between pesticides and breast cancer. It was another, again, where it's irrefutable. I mean, we understand. I mean, it's what strikes me is these professionals, or the so-called experts, are claiming to are acting like this is new information. In this article, where Deborah Lee Davis, a wonderful scientist, and Mary Wolf, who's with Mount Sinai Medical Center, have once again, I mean, this isn't new information. Rachel Carson was saying this how many years ago? 30 years ago. And we're acting like it's new. And an individual from the National Cancer Institute, the head of the National Cancer Institute, again, echoing what was going on here in Cancer Alley, says the environmental hypothesis is extremely interesting, and we're going to pursue it. This is 1993, people. The head of the National Cancer Institute, again, he's this whole thing where people are acting like, isn't this environmental hypothesis interesting? It's, they're obviously lying. They know what's up. I believe.
I think, Michael, in conjunction with that, I think the extremely interesting study in Israel, where they had a much higher breast cancer rate in Israel than other countries, and they were also using a lot of pesticides there, and they phased out or stopped using a lot of chlorinated pesticides, and the breast cancer rate began to fall. And Israel is the only country in which the breast cancer rate was falling, because they stopped using, at the same time that they stopped using chlorinated organics.
Yeah, yeah. So the science is out there, the studies are out there. We have to get our hands on them and package it with people, getting people behind it. When Edwards comes out with his craziness, I mean, you guys do it. Go and sit on the steps and let him know he's crazy with people. Follow him around, drive him nuts. Stay on him. Stay on him. Don't let him get away with it. He's lying to you. Look into your own health situations and experience that pain, experience that emotion, and let him experience it. Let him experience your anger, your frustration, your outrage, and follow him around. They publicize, his schedule. I mean, you can find out where the governor is all the time. Follow him, be there, hit him over the head with these facts constantly, with the facts. Yes.
We've got 2 more minutes, but I think you had mentioned Linda and health surveys and stuff.
Yes.
And she just wanted to announce something real quickly to share with somebody.
Okay, go ahead, Linda.
Right now, EHM is doing some national surveys, and don't leave this conference, please, without picking up our national lupus survey.
there's enormous resources right in this room. You know, Linda and Paul sitting right here. So, yeah.
Are there any studies being done on cancer in newborn or cancer showing up in early infancy? I am personally observing that in several instances just in the last year alone in Japan, you know, and I don't know whether there are any studies being done or not. Nurses tell me that, you know, nurses who've been in the field for many, many years tell me that they've never seen anything like this in the past few years. And if there are no studies being done in that area, I would like to suggest, because if ever there's an area where we might experience emotionalism, you know, I mean, children coming into the world, babies born, I mean, it's
Yeah, we all have. It wasn't as rare as it used to be. But let me just close up with saying that again, to reiterate that Louisiana is the model. Keep it up. Keep raising hell. Keep organizing people and educating people. And remember, our motto, which we got from Jonathan Schell, is every person is the right person to act, and every moment is the right moment to begin. In a lot of ways, Louisiana and Lean embodies that, and I say keep it up. And if I could, I have a real quick little poem I'm going to end.
Take your time.
Thank you.
We have time for the poem.
Time for a poem. Very short, from Gary Snyder. It's called For the Children. The rising hills, the slopes of statistics lie before us. The steep climb of everything, going up, up, as we all go down. In the next century, or the one beyond that, they say, our valleys, pastures, we can meet there in peace if we make it. To climb these coming crests, one word to you and your children, stay together, learn the flowers, go light. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Wasn't that great? One thing that we can share with you is Lean is working on the cancer data. We've received the raw data from the Department of Health and Hospitals. You may well know that we're behind, are we surprised, the other states in the nation as far as getting this information out. Plus we have some real problems with the way they're making some of the correlations. So we'll be sharing with the network our own work as it continues, because we think that there's been some real problems about their putting some of it out. Now we have a short break, and then we're going to hear from Dr. Jerry Poge. Thanks for your attention.